change the pictures up. Okay, here we go. Someone working with you. Another day. Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Wait. This morning's meditation was turbulent. I'm thinking about this vaccine. Yeah, I want my friends who have pre-existing health conditions to be covered. I mean, I don't trust the American government for shit. I mean, after selling us crack, tuskegee, slavery, support of apartheid, Jim Crow, autism in the vaccines they gave our children that were more prevalent in black people, and they knew it and didn't tell us. So the vaccine, example of their ability to mislead us, even though they have information that could save us. But they just neglected to tell us. CDC has been fucking horrible to black people. But, you know, here in Indonesia, people are fighting. People who have resources are fighting to get in front of the line and take a vaccine. And rich people in China also, I don't know what how they're working, but I know that always the rich get. I have some rich friends in America who are trying to get their vaccine scheduled already. And I have other friends who, so the fact is that of all colors, people are breaking their neck to get to the vaccine. I don't want blacks to, as a group, reject it. I want there to be more research. And I want those who are already sick to consider taking it. If it gets that bad and we have such a pandemic of a scare in our community and we are dying at 2.5 or 3 times the rate of our white counterparts, I want to recommend it. Could you press the button? Today we're talking about the Yoga Sutras, so you can tune out or tune in. But we're talking about, see if we see, there he is, Jules. I want to bring in, right there,
Yes.
the first one, yeah.
Yep.
I want to bring in a master yogi.
This master yogi has a very deep understanding of the Yoga Sutras. In the Yoga Sutras, we have in yoga 8 limbs. And the 8 limbs of yoga, Raja, are the, well, I'll let you talk about it, Jules. The 8 limbs of yoga are Ahimsa, the yamas, the niyamas, the asana.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Sanskrit words, I think, first 3, for instance. Maybe I don't know how many we're going to cover. You think we can cover 8 limbs?
I mean, we could just say them and then we cover them.
We can cover them. You tell us what they are. But let me just say what they are. They're a system that if you were to follow this system, it would help you to achieve freedom from suffering. If we could actually live up to and promise ourselves and then be diligent in these social and other laws or ideas, premises. It's a scientific practice, isn't it, yoga? It's like if you do this, you get that. But you tell us about it, what the 8 limbs of yoga are.
Sure. First, thanks again for letting me be a part of this wonderful project you're doing. I appreciate it. Maybe before we get into the 8 limbs, it's nice to provide a little bit of context. Is that all right with you?
Please.
So I think one of the things that's important to understand when it comes to looking at yoga is that the idea is it's a philosophy. So a lot of people know yoga about like the physical movements, but yoga is a philosophical school coming from India. And of course, the question is, what is a philosophical school good for? And any philosophy is interested not so much in what people think, but in how they think about things. And so yoga philosophy gives us tools on how we can think about things. And one thing that I think everybody has on their mind is how do we live a life that has value and meaning for us? And so yoga philosophy attempts to look at this question: how do we live a examined and fulfilled life? And in the second chapter of this book called the Yoga Sutra, which is the Sadhana Pada, which literally means the book on practice, Patanjali lays out what's called the Ashtanga Method. Ashta means 8, Anga is limbs, so you could think like a tree that has 8 branches. And each of these branches is connected to the fundamental desire for living an examined and fulfilling life.
Well, Jules, that's a very straightforward and basic, because I talk a lot about yoga sutras and the science of yoga, philosophy, but science also sometimes, because you do this, you get that. So I like to say it's a science book for happiness when I talk about the Yoga Sutras. And I try to simplify it, but and this practice, these 8 limbs, when laid out for you and taken out of Sanskrit and described, script and applied or promoted in a way that people can digest them, it's hard to deny that these recommendations are not the best way to move your life forward to a happier, more fulfilled life. It's hard to deny. So I'll begin, right? It's hard to say, oh, if the 5 yamas are the first of the 8 limbs. And the first yama is ahimsa, non-harming. And what it means to us, not as yogis, but as human beings, is different. Is why translations in scripture always require masters to really understand them, and so they don't get misunderstood and used incorrectly. But non-harming is pretty simple. Dr. King talked a lot about ahimsa, the first of the 5 limbs, the five yamas. Ahimsa, a lifestyle of non-harming. And then to us, that means the least amount of harm possible. Tell us what you think, what else ahimsa leads to. Our teachers would give us one thing. I'll get back to it, but go ahead. Because we have the same teachers. For those who don't know, Jules is a master yogi from the first discipline that I studied, and it is the Jiva Mukti system. And so our teachers, as all teachers, will have a slightly different translation of this Sanskrit book, and will even use a different translation, to get as a background for how they will understand the Yoga Sutras. But it's all deeply personal, but it's all pretty broad to everyone. In other words, ahimsa works for everybody. Non-harming, we all like that idea. Well, go ahead, tell me what it means to you. What are the core foundations of non-harming?
Sure. I think you could probably break up ahimsa into different categories. In fact, Patanjali, later after he describes ahimsa, he breaks it up into different categories. But I think one idea is the first step would be to try to recognize where you're causing harm, right? Because that's not clear to everybody. If you're not reflecting on your actions, you might not recognize that you're causing harm. I mean, you've done such a great job of bringing people's attention to the harm that is caused in the food that they eat, right? And Sharon and David, our teachers, have also tried to bring attention to the harm that is caused. So if you're not aware of the harm that you're causing, right? So step one is to open your eyes to see the effects of your actions, right? To reflect on how your actions vibrate out into the world. And so the first step would be to interrupt that harm. But that's really like a basic step, to interrupt your own harm, but then try to interrupt the harm that you experience in the world. There's a great, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but Martin Luther King got a lot of his inspiration for his nonviolent movement from Mahatma Gandhi. And one of the things that Mahatma Gandhi talked about was, it's not enough to say that you don't want to harm. Then you have to take positive action. So it's not just reducing harm, but it's increasing compassion. So a practice for ahimsa could be making your desire or your goals or your actions so oriented to the uplifting of other people that there's not space in your heart for harm. Right? So that's different than saying, I'm not going to punch anybody in the face today. And then you flip that and you say, I'm going to feed people today. And then when you feed people, there's just no room for the harm to be there.
We're going to try to move on, because we can spend the whole time that we have on ahimsa, non-harming, because it is a study in and of itself. Let me just interrupt by, we've seen the images of the monks who wear face masks that have veils, that have screen nets, so they don't inhale the bugs, that they sweep their path so they don't step on the bugs, and they live a life.
James.
What are they called?
James.
Okay, that's a particular sect of some religion or some.
Yeah, it's a religious
practice?
it's a religious belief in India, and where they take non-harming to the end.
But it's part of their spiritual cleansing. It serves two purposes. One, of course, not to cause harm, but it cleanses the soul, not to cause any harm. That alone, so ahimsa alone, just as a practice, is enough to bring you to enlightenment, right? I mean, enlightenment comes at any time, but it's enough to really, if you can do it with a heart that not something that is forced on you so much as it's just a light heart. You do everything you can not to cause harm. So ahimsa, it's the first of the 5 yamas, which is the first of the 8 limbs of yoga. I don't want to make this complicated. We all understand non-harming. And the second one is satya,
Truthfulness, essentially, you could say. Yeah.
Truthfulness, satya.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, again, a self-reflection in the middle of it, right? Tell us about what you think about that, because your insight into ahimsa and what Dr. King taught you about ahimsa, about going out and doing good and relieving harm, and so that there's no space, as he said, as Joel said, there's no space for causing harm because you're busy doing good or relieving harm, suffering. Go ahead, second, satya.
Yeah, satya, truthfulness. Truthfulness is a hard thing. Well, because here's the question: what if your truth causes harm? Right? So actually, ahimsa is said to be underneath everything. So how do you allow even truthful words to be non-harming? Now, of course, harm also requires some intent often. But there's something that always comes back to me when it comes to truthfulness. Do you know who Dr. Joy Leary is?
I don't.
Dr. Joy Leary, she's an academic, but she has this wonderful talk that I used to listen to all the time about post-traumatic slave syndrome. And she would talk about whether something is true or not is not the only thing, because not everything a man knoweth can be disclosed, nor every utterance timely, nor every timely utterance suited to the capacity of those who hear it. And she says Martin Luther King had a message that was true. He had a message that was timely, but he has a message that was not suited to the capacity of those who heard it, which is why he was struck down. And so I think truthfulness also requires an element of timeliness, and speaking truth to power may cause harm, but you do it from a place of wanting to incorporate people into a greater society, into a greater whole.
That's a very tough one, truthfulness. Like you said, truthfulness, if people can't digest it, even when I talk about veganism, when I go back to diet, there's no question, not only diet, but to the planet, eating animals causes harm. But if people are not ready to digest it, if you can't say it the way that people can digest it, then it just goes on deaf ears.
Exactly.
It doesn't cause more harm necessarily, but it can.
Or it could push people away from where you want them to go.
Push them away. It does, in fact, in many cases, push people away. And so not only on that, on every subject, I saw something that really disturbed me. People sometimes, through their own personal pain body, make choices that maybe cause harm and hurt people. The therapy to get people out of pain and suffering and to digest a misunderstanding is one that each person has to go on personally, as well as, through whatever resources and support systems they can find in the outer world to help them to look inside, to make statements and choices that will evolve a conversation or a a situation to where people have a general understanding. People have different perceptions of the same event.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to be truthful when people have edged in them through their pain body a particular perception of an experience. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. That's, I
What's
mean,
it?
I think that's really important. Each one of us is walking around with our own trauma, our own difficulties, and often we're trying to protect ourselves from reliving or revisiting those places. But when you were speaking, another idea came up when it comes to truthfulness, and that is necessity. You might have something that is true, but is it necessary for you to say it? You know, that's a big thing. Like people, oh, I'm just going to speak my truth. Well, you know, does everybody need to hear it? And so
And will
recognizing,
they
is it
gain
true?
from it anything? Will they gain anything from it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the question. What are you giving truth for? Is it for your ego, or is it for the relieving of suffering as a person or people that you're speaking to?
exactly.
Uh, Sometimes, like, in the Bhagavad Gita, they had to go to war. They didn't want to go to war. Arjuna begged Krishna, and Krishna said, do what you want. But of course, he left him with his dharma, and he went to war. But he said, you can go meditate, but we need you in this moment, actually, to do the work. So, okay, truthfulness. That's that. So it's Ahimsa, Satya, Brahmacaria. No, Asteya,
Asteya,
Brahmacharya.
yeah, Asteya.
No, but what's the second one? The third one is Brahmacharya.
No. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha.
Asteya is third. Okay, Asteya. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's move on
You
to
had it
that.
right.
Yeah, I took drugs as a child. What else? Non-harming, non-lying, non-stealing.
Yeah,
Not to steal. So that means more than just. So I think you'll go into it more, and you have a deeper or a different understanding of it. But my first thing is, it's obviously not to take shit that's not yours just right out the box. But there's other ways of saying non-stealing. It's wastefulness. It's something that is a toxic masculine trait. We want what we want and we take it. It's wastefulness. Males are gatherers. They put things in a box. They keep doing it, and that gatherer becomes greed. So you talk about that.
sure. Well, I think like harming, non-stealing has a lot of interesting ideas. Like we often think of stealing in terms of objects. Like I could take your money or I could take your physical possessions. But we often take things that are non-physical. Like we take people's time. We take people's time and it's such a valuable resource and we don't get it back. We take space in their mind, we take space in their heart, we take space from people. And again, this is something that you've brought a lot of light to and that Sharon and David try to bring a lot of light to. But we take a lot from this earth. Like we take the hope away from other beings. We take the desire to live away from other beings. We create a world that is devoid of opportunity. So we take opportunities from people, and not just human people. We take these opportunities from other sentient beings on this planet. We take it from the rainforest. We take it from the oceans. And this is hard to give back. How do you give back opportunity?
If you're just joining us, we're speaking to Yoga Master Jules Bieber. I never can pronounce your last name. Did anybody ever use your last name? I see it. Hip Hop
Yeah,
Asta is his. Hip Hop
yeah.
Asta
Jules
is your
Febre.
Instagram,
It's
right?
all good.
Right, but I've known him since he was a kid. But deeply, deeply studied from our teachers at Jivamukti. Jules is one of their master teachers, and he's a deep study in yogic science. And so, yogic science is also a textbook for happiness. It's a science book because as you move towards a more awakened state, and as you move towards the self, you become more happy. So the yogic philosophy or yogic science is a science book for happiness. So we're talking about the 8 limbs of yoga, and we're talking about how they, followed properly, could help us to move towards God or God's consciousness, or what yogis refer to as samadhi, this 8th limb. And they're meant to be practiced at the same time. So we've talked about Ahimsa, Satya, we're doing Asteya
Mm-hmm.
right now, and what he's saying about non-stealing. it's all of our efforts to take more than we need. And I was tracing it back to toxic masculinity. And so instead of it being the gatherer, it's greed. And there's where we take more of the environment, of everything, and it ruins the balance of our ecosystem. So continue. But you said it pretty much all of it, right? Between us, we've covered that.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because the more you, like you were saying, the more you get into this role of taking things that don't belong to you, whether it's time or possessions, then the more you have, the more you try to protect, the more your mind is taken up with everything that you have. And that leads into the next one, which is aparigraha, or non-accumulation of stuff. I mean, it's just like
Brahmacharya.
yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, so we could get into Brahmacharya first.
Let's make it quick. It's because there's a lot of dispute as to fully what it means. You have all these tantric people and all these, but just let's give us a basic explanation of Brahmacharya.
Sure. I think it's one of the things that I learned from Sharon and David is that it's always nice if you have the opportunity to look deeply into a word. So the word Brahma is sometimes used as like this god-like figure within Hinduism, but it comes from literally this root which means creativity or expansion. And so Brahmacharya means to control the energy of creativity. And what's more creative than the sexual energy, than the sexual force? It creates life. And so, yeah, sometimes it's given as non-sexual interaction, like a monk, you would take on vows of abstinence. But maybe in a more broad understanding, it's looking at this idea of how do you focus your creative energy? And how do you not abuse sexual energy? How do you not abuse your own sexual energy? And how do you not abuse the sexual energy of someone else? How do you not turn your vision into commodifying the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever it is, your persuasion or non-binary or whatever it is? How do you make sure that what you have as a creative force that gives life to so much doesn't get turned and twisted and depletes you and others along the way? Because remember, what we're trying to say is these 8 limbs are trying to teach us how to live a fulfilled life.
And to be a service, a greater servant, as we get our body and mind in order, we become a greater servant. So even as you think about the chakras, you started to root chakra, and you build that so you can be a great servant. The Muladhara chakra informs or sets us on a path, or not only does it do those things, but it also prepares us to be a great servant as we move up. And these things happen at once, but still to get the first home body in order. You can't serve God unless you take care of yourself, is a way to look at it. So after Brahmacharya, you have
I just wanted to if you don't mind, somebody said when it comes to Brahmacharya, Billy, aka King Will, said it's very easy through discipline. And but I think most people will tell you discipline is not easy. Things are easy when you have discipline, but discipline itself is not so easy.
When you gain a proper balance and you go throughout life with this quote unquote discipline, it becomes ease and you seek it. Discipline based on the Yoga Sutras, discipline based on spiritual sciences or teachers, they teach you to make it easy. It may be hard to get there. If you stop eating animals, then you feel lighter, you feel better, and you don't want to put animals in you. If you stop doing certain things and you shift, your consciousness shifts where you don't want to. You don't like the smell of beef. You don't like the smell of cooked flesh. So your taste buds change. Mm-hmm. And this is in every instance where you do God's or what is promoted by scripture or these sciences like yogic science. You do it and it becomes second nature, and it becomes what you look forward to. I look forward to coming out of class every day. I come out of class, I'm happy, I'm awake. My moment, I ride my scooter home, it's my best part of the day. So this discipline to go to class every day gives you this benefit that you want to live for. So if you serve others, the feeling you get when you drop your kids off at school, you see them getting out of class, like, that's why I got up. And it may take a moment to get up, but you get used to it, because that feeling of watching them walk off to school, they say, bye, Daddy, look over their shoulder, you say, okay. So you do it the next day, and you do it, you show up. So you show up in life selfishly, because by doing what's good, you get a great result. So good givers are great getters. You become into a cycle of giving, more into a cycle of giving. So that's, anyway, that's...
No, that's good, because that goes right back to what we were saying before. Like, so what you just said was, the more you do it, like, then you just have that feeling within you that you don't like the smell of beef, or you don't like to take negative actions because it doesn't sit well with you anymore. That's exactly what we were talking in the beginning about ahimsa. There isn't space in there anymore because you filled it up with compassionate actions. There isn't space in there for harm or for the ugly act of wanting to participate in killing another being to have a meal.
It's selfish to some degree, a part of it, we hope, that you feel inspired and you want to keep coming back to that which lifts you and the community up. Because you get that benefit from doing good, and good, promotes good. And this word good is, I use this way, but it's still.
The Dalai Lama calls it enlightened self-interest.
Enlightened self-interest. Is that what His Holiness calls it?
Yeah, that's what he says.
There we go. So the last one is aparigaha, non-greed.
Yeah.
Goes back to the same thing. It's, you give us some aparigaha quickly, because we've spent a lot of time on the yamas, and let's try to gloss over some of the other stuff, but it's all, we could go on. I think we should do more. Shana said something, but I missed it. Shana's our creative director. I was also a
nice.
student.
When it comes to a parigraha, it's so ahimsa means not harming, means not, and himsa is to harm. So means like, it's like in English, like unfriendly or friendly. So ahimsa means not harming. Aparigraha, means not. Pari means around. And graha is like the English word to grab. So aparigraha means no longer everywhere you turn trying to grab something. So no longer trying to mine, push people away, mine, push people away, mine. And it means to not take so much that others have less. So you don't take so much that others have less.
I recommend that those who really care about yogic science as a lifestyle, which is a lifestyle, when we speak of the Yoga Sutras, this science book written before, well, some people would say before the Quran, the Bible, and the Torah. This science book, which speaks to the same teachings in the Bible, Quran, and the Torah. This science book is a simple, non-religious way to go forward and move towards Christ consciousness, nirvana, samadhi, takwa, same thing. This presence, this awareness, because the freedom from suffering comes as we start to live selfishly, and
enlightened self-interest.
Enlightened self-interest. So those are the 5 yamas, and the 5 yamas. Then there's niyamas. Let's just go through the other ones. Let's mention them all, and then let's come back. We don't have Jules, we can go forever. You could, Jules, when we open the school, I really want to extend an invite for you to come and teach the Yoga Sutras, the entire book, including the 8 limbs of yoga. We want to rely heavily on the 8 limbs because, these 200, 300-hour teacher trainings, so that's why we have a set sequence. I told you that. You're like, Mukti has, but a set sequence. They do it every day. They get out. They're confident. They can teach the physical practice of yoga, which is what they want to teach. And then we make sure they understand some parts of the Yoga Sutras, the Bhagavad Gita, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. And then by the time, and a lot of it is based in what we were taught in the yoga, in the Jiva Mukti Yoga, but the intention is to make the simplest, easiest to digest, and most basic background, so that the teachers we send out into the world will be ones who are confident in what they do know, and what you leave with is a background that sends you on a path to learn more, but enough that you can teach and you're confident. So that's what the GDOS University or School of Yogic Science wants to put out. Again, and Jivamukti is a very, very, very important pillar. And then there's Yogananda and Sachidananda, who are two other inspirations. So sometimes you see three sets of teachers as the inspiration for a particular school. And those are the three inspirations for the school that we're building. So, and the one we built. So, okay, now second set is the niyamas.
Niyamas, yeah. So yama and then niyama, and niyama is ni can mean underneath, and so niyama can be that which, of course, like you said, you want to practice these all together, but niyamas can be underneath and support the yamas. And so the first one is saucha, which is cleanliness. Cleanliness of mind, cleanliness of space. And I like to relate them to each other. And you probably know more than most people, having lived such like a crazy hectic lifestyle and doing so much of what you've done, that if your surroundings are disorganized, your mind is going to be disorganized, right? Have you found that to be true?
Yeah.
Like the external environment is a mirror image of what's happening inside, right? So if you don't put your house in order, how can you really go out into the world? So the first one is, cleanliness of mind, cleanliness of attitude, cleanliness of how you carry yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first one. And then what's the second niyama?
Santosha. Saucha and Santosha. Santosha is contentment.
I've always struggled with Santosha because it sounds like it's an instruction, as are the Yoga Sutras, to people. But contentment is something you achieve more than you just take on. But the idea to sit and say, I want to be content, is not, it's the result of the other work, I think. So you have to tell me what Santosha means to you.
Sure. I think, all right, again, I like to look at them relative to each other. If I'm constantly, like a parigraha, if I'm constantly going out there and reaching for stuff, then I'm not content. And I think contentment is a practice. So how do you become content? Well, first you have to have an attitude of gratitude, at the risk of sounding kind of like corny cliche yoga teacher, like gratefulness, but really recognizing the incredible opportunities that we have, and that for most of us, what we have is enough. Even if we want more, that in this moment what we have is enough, and that's contentment. Contentment is looking around and being grateful, even for the things that are challenging. Which, of course, it's easier said than done, right? I don't want to get up here on a soapbox and be like, oh, be grateful for the opportunities that are challenging. But I think when most people look back, they find that the most uncomfortable situations have also been those times where they've most grown.
In yogic science, or forget science, in reality, in our own reality, our reality is that contentment and this whole idea, of a comfortable seat. So we have to at least recognize that, life can't feed us anything from the outside. It's our perception of life that we are working on. And from the inside out, contentment and full contentment, full practices of these things could lead, or it could happen, that we could be stuck on stupid, where struggle becomes ease, and where we are not the mind and the body, as they say. We are just the watchers, and the world moves, and we do our job. So we see the world in perfect order, and we become perfect servants. And this contentment sets in, this cleanliness exists, this feeling of non-harming exists. All of the things in Scripture are just there. And then we don't suffer. When they cut our arm off, we're present to the point we say, wow. Because the body and the mind are nothing compared to what God gives us, this consciousness, this awakened space, which is infinite. So that's a lot. Sounds crazy, but they promoted heaven on earth to Christians.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
promoted
well, here's another
Christ
thing to
consciousness.
say again.
They promoted Christ consciousness to Christians in the
Yeah, for
beginning,
sure.
right? They promoted um, this idea of being fully enlightened, or um, taqwa for Muslims,
Okay.
nirvana for Buddhists, this fully enlightened space. So all of this work we're doing is to get more seconds of presence, more awakened moments, more moments where we can just be fully here. And then, so these things are not, they sound unachievable, but the more seconds we get in this kind of consciousness, the more awakened seconds we get, the better off we are. And we're always fighting for another second. It's all the work we do. Steal shit, rob, take advantage, abuse, all the things that we say don't do. You do those things so you can have 1 second. And then good things that we think are good. We serve God, we do something good, and selfishly we feel better. But all we want is to feel better. And the things that we do are not helpful to the planet, to the collective, sometimes come back to bite us in the ass. They all do, but we don't know how and when. So we try to do things that have lasting, stable impressions on us so we can be present, more lasting presence, more stable presence, because that's the only gift, is comfortable seat, is presence. So I say that because that's such an important point. We are seeking yoga, nothing else. We're seeking yoga. And so when you have that in mind, you can forget it all the time as we're reaching for shit. But we know that the reason we're reaching for it, we get in that new car, we sit down and we relieve the neediness for a second. And so we feel yoga, but it goes away. It keeps going away. We want to expound on those seconds. I'm sorry. We go beyond that and
Well, no, you're bringing what I think you're touching on is a really interesting point, and maybe we could just linger here for a moment, because what you're talking about, Patanjali references a little bit earlier, when he says that there's 5 obstacles, and 2 of those obstacles are raga and devesha, attachment to pleasurable things and aversion to uncomfortable things. That these are obstacles to true happiness. And that contentment lies in recognizing that the highs, they're not really high, and that the lows are not really lows. That really we get stuck in the yearning for something. It's not even that when we get it, we're happy. It's just the process of wanting, or running away. And when you are able to practice not being attached to a pleasurable thing and not being running away from a painful thing, then that's where Santosha lives. In between the polarity between I want this and I don't want that.
neediness is the cause of suffering. It's said by by something that Buddhists say a lot, right? But it's what all scriptures promise. Needing nothing. This is I like to talk about needing nothing a lot. I wrote a book called Super Rich, The State of Needing Nothing. I couldn't call it enlightenment because nobody had bought the book, but it became a bestseller because it talked about the state of needing nothing. And that's what we're seeking, in every effort. And we're trying to give you a roadmap to get there without causing yourself and others suffering. And then a roadmap to be there more often, to be in a state of needing nothing more often. If you don't like the idea of enlightenment, being stuck where you could never feel any suffering and you just see the world as God in all instances, if you don't like that or believe in that, I bet if you do this shit we promise, you'll have more seconds of presence, and you can get that pretty quickly. You can come out of a yoga class and like, wow, right? You can come out of doing something good and think, wow. But so if you do all these things combined over a period of time, you might get more and more seconds of presence, more and more, and then it could actually snap. Oh, shit. But you don't have to count on enlightenment or believe in it. Just know that the more seconds you get of presence, that's how you win. If they're winning, how do you win in life? Okay, so the third one is asana, which is what people know. The third of the 8 limbs of yoga.
But do you want to cover the last of the niyamas?
Oh yeah.
So we have Saucha, Santosha, then it's tapas, which goes back to what Homeboy said earlier, discipline, essentially. Tapas.
Hard work, dedication, and focus, I like to refer to when I think about tapas. Like even when you're going through the physical practice, it's tapas, burning through impurities through hard work, dedication, and focus. But so that's tapas.
Yeah.
That's one way of saying it. But you may
No, that's great. I
Let's
think
go
it's
to the
great. I
next one.
think
Tapas. Swadhyaya,
the
study of self.
exactly study of self, study of who you are, what makes you who you are, how you know what you know. And this goes back a little bit to what you were saying about yoga being a science. It means empirically. You don't just believe things off of blind faith. It's a practice. You do it and you look for the result. Because if the result's not there, then maybe you're doing something wrong. So you study, okay, what am I doing? How do I know? Am I really doing the things that my teachers taught me? Am I really delving deeply? And you reflect back on your own actions. You study your true nature. Yeah.
Study of self. We could also say that any scripture will do. A great yoga teacher told me once, any scripture will do. Because they say to behold, the kingdom is inside, right? There's one book. And then in all the good books, you study the self. As you study God, you're studying the higher self. So when religions teach you about God, they're teaching you how to lift yourself up and what you should look like in the shining, the most best example of you. So study of self is very important, you know, and that's Swadhyaya. Or Swadhyaya, is that how you pronounce it?
Svadhyaya.
Swadhyaya, which is
Hmm.
study. And then Iswara Pranidhana. Is that how you
Exactly.
pronounce it? And that's
Yeah.
giving all your efforts to the greater good or to God. You might not want to
Hmm.
use the word God. All your efforts to the greater good. Iswara Pranidhana. And that's a very important thing. And, you know, it's like your efforts, give them away. Because the fruits of your labor don't cause happiness. It's the work itself that's the prayer. And I say that a lot because people always want to know about prosperity. You know, life's goal, its greatest goal is a comfortable seat. But you may want to have a bunch of empty seats. They make you sick. But if you get a bunch of seats, you can put other people in them. So as you're out there gathering and trying not to be greedy, you're gaining more tools for the benefit of the collective. And so as a big business guy, you want to look at it like the philanthropic, social, and political things you can do and the things you can do that lift other people up are a benefit from your work. Because again, learn to sit more comfortably in that one seat. And then you can be a greater giver, and good getters, great givers. And the cycle of giving and getting becomes your real mantra. So that's on that one.
Yeah, I think,
So
just to break it down again one more time, Ishvara could be, it's often translated into English as the Lord, not necessarily in a religious sense. And pranidhana is to offer your effort. And so one of the ways that I like to think about it is you hold in your mind's eye, in your heart, in your, however you want to think about it, you hold up, okay, what are the ideals? What does an ideal compassion look like? What is ideal, like you said, selflessness, doing something for the sake of someone else truly? What does that mean? And if you dedicate your energy to that, that's what you become. So it's not like, oh, let me bow down in front of some God. It's like, no, let me emulate this ideal, because as I emulate that, it's not that heaven is somewhere else. I make that here where I live. And then this idea of God is here, however you want to think about God or the Lord or compassion or altruism or
but
empathy.
but in the same note, we're talking about a collective. And you, as you become more free from the body and the mind as controlling entities, and you become the watcher of the body and the mind, you're said to be, now again, we said to be absorbed into the whole. That you
Hmm.
are this yogi, now part of the collective and a servant of the whole. Like if God were the ocean, you'd be a cup of God. So giving your efforts to the greater good feels good because it takes the boundaries down, and you
Hmm.
see yourself in others, and as you serve others, you're serving the self, and this whole thing becomes easier.
Yeah.
So it
It
becomes
becomes a
easier,
positive feedback.
right? Okay, the next thing is asana. We'll get to at least asana today. How far
Yeah.
are we in? Because I got to go to yoga at 8:35.
Man, you're in yoga class right now.
No, but I got to go practice a physical asana. Right, I have to go to asana.
Yeah.
Asana means seat.
Yeah.
And you go to the physical practice. And I'm going to give you mine because mine is pretty simplistic, and you're going to, because as a master asana teacher, you can give me more. The idea we smile and breathe in difficult poses. Right? This is Stiram Sukha Asanam, to have a steady, joyful pose. And that's smiling and breathing in difficult poses. And so when we get off the mat, we can smile and breathe in difficult poses. But, you know, for our practice of moving towards God, yogis talk about something that other religions don't talk so much about. We're not a religion, but the yogis are. But religiously, we practice asana so we can sit, so we can use the physical body as a support system for us moving towards God. So we do this thing that promotes circulation, this physical practice. So you're an asana teacher. Tell me. Somebody said took them to yoga class, they couldn't hang. You can always hang.
You can
You
always
lay on
hang.
your back and you can always hang. All you gotta do is kind of bend.
But I gotta say, I don't know who that was, but in whoever's defense, I've been there when you've taken a couple of unsuspecting students into class, and they're like, "Oh shit, it's getting real in here."
Well, yeah, but it's like, you know, you do the best you can. You smile and breathe. You know, I can't do
Of
what I used
course,
to do. I used to put both my feet behind my head, Joel.
I mean, you were hardcore with the practice every day. You be in there.
Well, I'm in there
Most,
every day now, but I still can't do the shit. I'm 63. I don't try. The other thing about the asana practice, you know, when you first get in, you're an athlete or whatever, you want to be able to do certain things, but it doesn't matter. I mean, literally matters not at all.
yeah.
If you can stretch it, you do a twist, it's good for your digestion. If you can twist more, it's same good. You get 100% of the benefit of a pose by doing a alternative pose from the bed. If you're in the hospital and you're in the bed, you can do yoga. You can do this. Adamati, what's it called when you
Ardha
stop
Matsya
twist?
Andrasana.
Adamati and Drasana. Okay, there we go. You don't have to put this leg over that leg and then do this and then wrap your arms and tight. It's Adamati and Drasana. It's good. You know, and it's sun salutation. You know, you ain't got to
Yeah.
do all that shit because if you want to keep promoting circulation, you want to keep creating a movement in the body, and so you can sit when it's done and receive, you know, the benefits of the class. And the more you can do is only the more you have been able to do, and you just before you know it, you can do shit Jules does. Jules can do some shit.
I
Physically,
can't, I
like he's
can't
like,
do, I can't do anything,
I see you
but
go into a handstand gracefully and slowly, like that's, you know, I could never really do a full handstand without, you know, every so often I'd get up and I'd stay for, you know, 10 seconds. I don't do it anymore. I don't even do form stand anymore. That's because it's
how's
not
your
part of
wrist,
my
by the
daily
way?
practice.
How are your wrists
My
doing?
wrists are much better.
Good.
Much better, but I do my chaturangas on my fingers still. So,
That's good.
so the
Here's
asana
a
practice,
couple of ideas. A couple of ideas for asana. As you said, the word asana means seat. But of course, well, what's a seat? As Sharon would say, a seat is your connection to the earth. When I'm sitting down, I'm grounded into the earth. What is earth? All things manifest. So when I'm working on an asana practice, I'm working on my connection to the literal, the ground below me, but I'm also working on my interconnection with life around me. And that's the most important part because the more you feel a part of life, the more you can engage in life. When you're no longer able to see yourself as part of the whole, you begin to disengage, right? If you're only stuck in your head about yourself, you could think of that as a form of depression. Depression can be defined in a very limited way about that one's inability to think about something other than themselves. You can't break that cycle of only thinking about yourself, right? And as you said, we get so stuck in our mind that we have to get into our bodies because that's where a lot of our trauma is. That's where a lot of our wisdom is too. So if we don't get into our body then we just what is this? Just a vehicle to bring our intellect everywhere? No. The body has its own wisdom, and the asana practice is about waking up that wisdom.
You know, Jules, we could do an hour on just the asana practice. People think that's yoga. They want me to go to yoga now. I don't want to miss you. If they don't start, they start the class, you're finished.
Do
So
your thing,
anyway,
man.
so we've done a lot. We covered the yamas, the niyamas, and we're into the asana. And the asana could go on forever, but there are 8 limbs of yoga. You can always look them up. It's a science book for happiness, the Yoga Sutras. And what we want to teach people is the ways out of the suffering, and yoga is the way that we've chosen. But it's not, when you look at the scriptures, it's not unlike or different from what's in other scripture. There's nothing about our practice that is different from your religious practices. It's just a very simple way, a simple science book to get you to move towards happier, healthier lifestyle. So this is the practice of yoga, not stretching and putting our feet behind our head. It's not that. It's smiling in difficult poses. And then the enlightened being smiles in all poses and sees God in all things. So we're trying to get a little closer to that. You have to make it to that. Every day be happier. And yoga helps with that. Jules, thank you again. I want to have you on a lot. I know that, you know, when I have Snoop Dogg, we have big audiences. But there's a few of us that, you know, we're changing the world. You got to start somewhere. One day when we get on and we talk about yoga, it'll be more important than if I, you know, get, you know, some other, not that there's anything wrong with getting people who made it out of the hood, and it's like Snoop is a hero. That's why people like him. But to incorporate in our culture the science and the basic rules for happiness. And then those rules will also be the basic rules for your prosperity in this world. And the stuff you want less, but you'll attract more. You become happier, healthier, and greater magnets and greater servants for the greater good if you start to practice. Just think about it for those who are listening. Yeah. God bless you, Jules. Thank you. I'm off the class. You got to come here, man. When are you coming here? I would have been there, man, but y'all are very COVID-y. Where are you? What country are you in?
I'm in Berlin. I'm in Germany. And just real quick before you go, just another shout out to our teachers, Sharon and David, who without them, I wouldn't really have much to say. A couple of people in the comments, one of them is my younger brother, who's a b-boy, who's in New York, talk about doing crazy things with his body. And, you know, I definitely count you as one of my teachers, Russell. So thank you for always giving me a platform. You've done it since I was a little baby teacher, and now that I'm a slightly bigger baby teacher, you're still giving me the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jules. All right.
Peace.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day for all those who joined us. When I chop this up, I want to get pictures of Jules. And Jules, can you send us some stuff and if you'd like to put it, share with the audience? And let's just continue the dialogue. Let's finish to talk about the 8 limbs, and let's talk about yoga more often. And let's try to get people, you know, to recognize it as a tool that will get us into a happier, more healthy space. Because that's really what God in me acknowledges the God in you. That's it. Bye. Okay, you got it? Yep. Oh, shit.
You better turn off your thing, man. You're still live.